Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of Women's World. In today's edition we'll be talking about a very important topic, that is women's empowerment here in Egypt and in Africa. We'll be talking about the state's efforts in order to boost and enhance women's empowerment here in the country as well as on the continental level in Africa. Since Egypt is the chairman of the African Union, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi offered his vision with regards to Egypt's efforts in women's empowerment in Egypt and Africa. That will be the main topic for today, and also we'll be featuring a special report on the very same topic. But first we're going to take a look at the press and we'll be right back. Welcome back, and we start with our first news item. Dr. Iman Abdel Gawad, the first Egyptian Secretary General of the Union of the Mediterranean Architects. Dr. Iman Abdel Gawad was elected as Secretary General of the Union of the Mediterranean Architects to become the first woman and the first Egyptian to serve in the Executive Office of the Union since it was founded in 1993. The elections took place during the 24th General Assembly of the Union, which was held in Mallorca, Spain in June 2018. Abdel Gawad is an Associate Professor of Architecture at the Department of Architecture, Faculty of Fine Arts, Helwan University, Egypt. And Egyptian-American Raghda Abdel Maqsood combined her passion for essential oils, aromatherapy and travel, and organized the Egypt Study Tour, the first essential oil study tour in Egypt, in partnership with the National Association for Holistic Association, NAHA. The study tour included visiting 4 main essential oils producers in Egypt. And Jumana Ismail participates in the world's first stand-up paddling in China. Egyptian SUP champion Jumana Ismail will participate in the first stand-up paddling known as SUP World Championship, which will be held this October in China. The Egyptian team will also include Sherif Khidr, co-founder of the Nile Kayak Club and Egypt Hiking Community. Jumana Ismail is also the first Egyptian woman to walk from Aswan to Cairo in 24 days. The walk was to raise awareness on population growth as part of Crossing Egypt Challenge in 2018. The challenge was sponsored by the United Nations Population Fund and the Royal Norwegian Embassy, the Ministry of Youth and other private companies. Jumana has her MBA from Leipzig University and works in the training and development field. And finally, Harper's Bazaar Arabia features Egyptian actress Sousan Badr in an article entitled "Egyptian Actress Sousan Badr Defying Outdated Beauty Norms and Redefining Ageism," dubbing her as the fugitive from the museum due to her uncanny resemblance of the ancient Egyptian Queen Nefertiti. And now we're going to feature a special report about Egypt's efforts in the field of women's empowerment in Egypt and, of course, in Africa. Egypt's women have always been its trumping card. For so many years, women have played a key role in all sectors on all levels. You even won't find an Egyptian revolution without a clear footprint for women in it, starting with 1919 revolution against the British occupation back then, which was led by political activist Safiya Zaghloul until June 2013. A part of their political contribution, Egyptian women have always been able to adapt different and tough social situations. As for years, women have done a lot in silence. Some of them got the chance to be known and recognized. Meanwhile, others remained in the shadow without even waiting to be discovered in any way. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi honored huge number of women who were described as social fighters. 2017 was decided to be named the Women's Year as recognition for what they did for their country. Egypt is the first Arab country and the second globally to develop a certification program for government and private sector based on the success of the Gender Equality Seal. In 2019, the first agency to be granted the seal was announced to be Egypt's Medium, Small and Micro Enterprises Development Agency, MSMEDA. The Egyptian private sector companies have started implementing women empowerment principles. The chief of the Arab Organization for Human Rights said that Egypt witnessed a real revolution in supporting women. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is keen on solving women's problems and boosting their position in the society. On the sidelines of the National Council for Human Rights and the Arab Organization for Human Rights meetings on panel legislation that was held in April, the chief of the Arab Organization for Human Rights assured that Egypt achieved a huge legislative revolution in protecting women against all sorts of violence and backing them to get their inheritance. The chief of Arab Organization for Human Rights further elaborated that thanks to President Sisi's efforts, women acquired a lot of their stolen rights over the last short period of time in the framework of efforts to empower women to play a greater role in decision-making. For the first time, there are 8 women ministers in the Egyptian government and more than 80 representatives in parliament. Women are appointed in leading positions in governorates and different sectors, which is considered a radical shift and huge progress. On the Egyptian Women's Day, marking March 8th, President Sisi announced 7 decisions related to women empowerment, including adoption of laws that aim at protecting women's rights, putting an end to domestic violence, and tackling the issues of early marriage and deprivation of education and post-divorce rights. Moreover, President Sisi proposed establishing a fund to address the challenges faced by the Egyptian women after he reviewed with the health minister the possibility to screen and treat women nationwide for breast cancer.
كلام كتير أنا ببساطة نص الدنيا مش محتاجة إن أثبت إن وجودي مهم وقبل ده كله كفاية عليا إن ليا مكان في الجنة عشان أنا أنا ببساطة نص الدنيا مش محتاجة إن أثبت إن وجودي مهم وقبل ده كله كفاية عليا إن ليا مكان في الجنة عشان أنا
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As we mentioned earlier, we'll be talking about Egypt's efforts in order to support and enhance women's empowerment, not only in Egypt, but also on the African level. We'll be talking about various types of women's empowerment when it comes to political, economic empowerment, as well, of course, as social empowerment with our dear guest today, Dr. Hiba Abdeljalil. She is the director of the British Educational Institution for Professional and Vocational Training. Great pleasure having you with us, Dr. Hiba. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Hela. Thank you for the kind invitation. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Always a pleasure being with you. Now, to start with, why did you choose this type of studies to begin with?
Well, the first choice, it was just language as a tool for everything else in the world. And from there, I managed to go into education, the education field, which is an industry dominated in Egypt by women. So more than 80% of the HR in the industry of education in Egypt is led by women. So we can definitely see women as university professors, deans in different faculties, teachers, primary education teachers, teacher trainers. Everything in the industry of education is nearly led by women. So that was of very much interest for myself. And from there, I started.
Okay. Now, there has been a strong trend supported by the Egyptian leadership in supporting women and enhancing the empowerment of women. Various institutions, whether public or private, are now providing special training for women in order to achieve this target. How do you see that?
So just today, I was reading the news in the morning, and I was very, very happy to read that Minister Hala Said,
Minister of Planning.
Yes. She announced that around 48 million Egyptian pounds are being injected in the new fiscal year for education. 35 million from that amount is going to the public sector, around 12 or 13 million to the private sector, which tells me a lot about the future of both women and education in the country. So I see that we're leading not just the education field, but through education also business. So imagine every single year of secondary education for a girl increases her income by 18%. Multiply that by the number of girls in primary and secondary education, and you can imagine the growth that we're looking forward to.
Well, definitely this is very important, and I have further questions for you. Let's take a short break and we'll be right back.
Sure.
فيش حد أحسن من حد.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Still discussing with you Egyptian and African efforts in enhancing and supporting the empowerment of women with our dear guest, Dr. Hiba Abdeljalil. Now, Dr. Hiba, we're not talking only about efforts to empower women on the local level, but on the continental level. How do you see Egypt's efforts in light of what President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi mentioned with regards to what Egypt can offer and what can Africa offer for women?
Right. So back to where we were, on the local levels, if we manage to increase the individual income by 18% per person, per woman, then imagine all the deprived ladies, girls in the continent. That would also help the GPD of their countries to increase, and in turn our GPD as well.
So we're talking here that the economic empowerment would lead eventually, that the social and economic empowerment would lead to the political empowerment of women.
Exactly. So if you're well educated as a woman, you make the right choices in your life. So you know where to start, you know what kind of field you want to pursue your studies in, you know how to make choices. You do not get married very early and stop your education. You're not burdened by societal issues that would hinder you from continuing your education. On the contrary, you move forward, and as a result,
what you have just mentioned are actually on the ground hurdles that Egyptian girls and women face here in the country.
Here and in the continent.
And in the continent.
And I think here we're moving forward in that aspect. So the number of girls who are enrolled in secondary education and university is by far exceeding the expected numbers. So I think we can easily be a hub for African women. So let me tell you a story, not about the African continent, but about two Israeli ladies whom I met here in Egypt back in 2009. And at that time, they were deprived of school education. They pursued their university degrees in Alexandria, Egypt. And one of them now is a lawyer, graduated from Harvard University. So she pursued her studies after having the first degree from Egypt in Harvard. And the other is a school principal for girls back in Afghanistan. So you can imagine the impact of just two females who managed to continue their education in Egypt and went out to the world and empowered other women, and consequently empowered the whole country. So I think as citizens here in Egypt, we should look forward to being a hub for the whole continent, because we're already leading.
We are.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to African
nations,
African nations.
Of course. And you know, we're aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN as well.
Yes.
Exactly. So we're moving forward along these lines. So specifically, SDG 4, SDG 5, we're moving forward along these lines. So we're not in isolation. We want to be the hub for Africa, and at the same time, we're connected to the whole world using the same standards the UN is applying throughout the whole world. So I think we should be motivated and look forward to education as a tool for economic growth.
Yes. Now, Hiba, if we're talking about women's empowerment, we're talking about the role of so many entities, bodies, and institutions.
Definitely.
Each one playing a role, but at the end of the day, a coordinated role is being played in order to achieve this ultimate goal. We're talking about education, so we have the private and public education. We have various educational institutions as well as training institutions. We're talking about the role of the private sector in boosting and supporting women in this regard. We're talking also about investments. We're talking about so many bodies and institutions. How can all these bodies and institutions come together in order to support women?
It's a whole big orchestra, and I'm very glad to say that it's led by women. So let's recognize a few of our female ministers.
The civil society as well, I forgot to mention. The media. In
civil
raising
society,
awareness.
Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Education. So the whole country private and public sectors are orchestrating together just to bring together efforts and move forward within the area of education.
Also, the National Council for Women is playing a great
Right.
role.
Right. So for us, as a British institution here in Egypt, what do? We empower women through qualifications, and men, of course, to be ready for the global market, both in Egypt and abroad. And this happens within the country. Now, we're not the only ones. The public sector as well does the same. We're collaborating with the public sector, different universities.
This is the type of collaboration I
Yes.
was asking about.
So it is happening. It
Yes.
is happening right now. So different public sectors, we're working together to help teachers in primary, secondary education be more qualified and give our children the type of education that they need under the auspices of the public sector, although we're private. So we're not like off track. We're all working together. We have the same goal, and we want to achieve the exact same goal for both women and men. But because, as you know, you empower one woman, you're empowering a whole family.
Yes.
And the concentration is definitely on women, especially when it comes to education. So have a look at the number of teachers, for instance, in both public and private schools. 90% females.
Wow.
They all seek quality education, qualifications from both public and private sectors.
Okay, so this kind of collaboration that you're telling me, Hiba, on the local level, could it be done on the African level? I mean, this type of collaboration between a private educational institution and the ministries, for example, can this be done with similar institutions and body in various African countries?
For sure, we share the same goal, and we have the same.
With the help of the civil society, I believe, too.
All the resources. I mean, the government is helping, but the government doesn't have all the answers and not all the resources. So the civil society needs to hop in.
Be involved.
Exactly, be involved, and we all get together. We can help the continent, and that would also reflect on our GPD in the country, locally.
Talking about the GDP, what are the models or examples of economic empowerment of women?
Various models and examples. So you have a lot of success stories of business women who are not just located in Egypt, but have gone abroad and expanded in different continents. So I don't want to mention specific names, but in specific industries like pharmaceuticals, education, agriculture. So different success stories for women who've expanded from Egypt to the continent, to Africa, the whole continent, and different continents as well.
Okay, and in your own opinion, do you think that women have like a natural instinct
To lead?
To lead.
Of course, of course.
Especially Egyptian women.
Of course. So how many times do you multitask effortlessly and then, well, sorry to say, I'm not sure if this is going to be politically appropriate or not, but to get one man in the same position, frantically handling one or two tasks maximum. And for you as a woman, like doing 6 things at a time
It's the normal thing.
It's the absolute normal thing, yeah.
It's the normal thing.
It's a normal thing.
Okay. Finally, how do you see efforts that still needs to be done in order to empower women on all levels?
Well, I don't see them as challenges and efforts. I see that we're working towards benchmarks. So the coming step, I think, would be having more and more African women here in Egypt getting that education.
I was just going to ask you about that because we need to draw lessons from African experiences in leadership.
Right.
They have African presidents and large numbers of members of parliament and members. So perhaps we need to
concentrate on that. And I
concentrate
think
on that.
also, you know, the Ministry of Health is even helping because one of the main problems of dropouts for women in Africa would be female hygiene and female health issues. So I think the Ministry of Health in Egypt is also helping us with that. So the more we get girls, ladies.
We have the breast cancer initiative by the president,
Right.
and other health
And
initiatives.
yes, and that would help as well. That would definitely help.
Yes. I'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Hiba Abdelgelil, Director
you.
of a British Educational Institution for Professional and Vocational Training. Great pleasure having you with us
Same
today.
here. Thank you so much for the kind invitation.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dr. Hiba. And ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this edition of Women's World. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi signing off for now.